With the fact that Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio is 6% and very low compared to countries like Ghana with 16%, the need to address the issues around tax compliance and increasing the tax net has become imperative. The Institute of Directors Nigeria, in its February 2018 Members' Evening, a policy advocacy group, explored the government initiative, the Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme, which is a 9-month federal government window given to taxpayers to regularize their tax status relating to previous tax periods and pay any taxes due covering the period 2011 to 2016. In his opening remarks, Alhaji Ahmed Rufai Mohammed, the president of the Institute of Directors Nigeria, shared why the Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme topic was a critical issue to discuss at the Institute.
The members' evening that we're having here today is one of such platforms provided by the Institute to create awareness amongst members of IOD of Nigeria of government policies and programs. The event also provides opportunities for our members to make meaningful inputs and policy options that could enhance government decision-making process on issues bordering on provision of an enabling environment for businesses. That's why the Institute has decided today and this evening to discuss one of the most important initiatives of this government, that the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VAIDS.
Mr. Wale Obayomi, the head, Tax and Regulatory KPMG Nigeria, gave a practitioner's perspective on the Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme initiative.
Beneath tax compliance actually is social contract. There's an expectation on the part of taxpayers when they pay tax to government. And the question is, what do they get in return? Now, why things have been this for so long is because of the low compliance. There's a low compliance level. In countries where actually government has no choice but to provide social services to the people, it's because tax compliance level is high, and people know that, government know that they'll call them to accountability. But in a situation where we're depending on oil revenues and only few people are paying taxes, then really, we've left government to its own devices to do what they like. It's our own expectation as tax practitioners that after VAIDS is over and we see increasing compliance level, then there'll be more and more enforcement of fiscal responsibility on the part of government. It was very strange to me, pleasantly though, one day when I read the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and I found that there's actually a provision that says that government can be taken to court in a public interest litigation, and that there will be no question about your local standard in filing such suits against the government. So, but the question is, why aren't people taking advantage of it in Nigeria? And the only answer could be that it's because there's low level of tax compliance. Because if you are compliant in paying taxes, then you will actually have the moral right and the legal authority to be able to challenge government to perform its own part of the contract. And that's the next phase that we need to get into in Nigeria. And it's my hope that VAIDS, just as it will launch us into an era of tax compliance, will also launch us into an era of fiscal responsibility when government will be alive to this responsibility and people will not pay tax and feel that they don't get anything in return.
Guest speaker and executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service Board, Mr. Tunde Fowler, gave further insight on the Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme and why Nigerians and corporations should align with it, considering the need for Nigeria to boost its tax compliance level.
Now, the important things we should know about VAIDS from a standpoint of view of money is that between July and December, all penalties and interest were waived. But considering I'm discussing this topic in the month of February, that means that some of us are latecomers to this new scheme. Now, between January and March 31st, only the penalty will be waived. And at the end of March 31st, 2018, interest and penalty will be charged, and it will also be liable for prosecution, where you have been found to be guilty of tax evasion. And a lot of people talk about multiple taxation. It has become such a topic, but I can assure you that in Nigeria, we do not have multiple taxation. Multiple taxation only arises when you pay the same tax to two tiers of government. A lot of businesses mistake user charges, penalties, levies, fines, and call them taxation. And in quite a number of cases, we'll find out that if we look at the legal taxes that are to be charged by each tier of government, there's really no organization that will pay more than 5 to 6 taxes. And when we look at the most popular ones, if you run a corporate organization, you pay corporate income tax. If you have staff, they're under the pay scheme. The payment on their income is not a charge to you, but is a charge to the worker. And then what other taxes do you really pay? You pay VAT, which is common to everybody. You pay withholding tax, which is an advanced tax to your credit. So that if that tax, if you have a government job and they deduct withholding tax, you can actually claim that tax as part of your tax due for that year. So really, when we look at it, I'm talking to the men and women who run the Nigerian economy here. So when we look at it, how many taxes do we really pay? A lot of people talk about our tax to GDP ratio. Last year it was put at 6%, or year before last. Last year ending in 2017, we will come up with a new figure. I'm glad to state that things are looking more promising, meaning that more taxpayers, both at the individual and corporate level, are beginning to pay their taxes. In terms of the individuals, we're still far. We expect, or we believe, we have anywhere between 65 to 70 million adults who are gainfully employed, who are earning an income, and out of that, only 14, or right now about 15 million individuals are registered as taxpayers, leaving a big gap. The small-scale business operators, in terms of membership, they number 37.5 million. So even if they alone join the tax bracket or the tax database and paid a minimum amount of a lunch or a dinner, most of us would go out and will spend 5,000 naira on lunch. That 5,000 naira could save a life, could save a child from dying from malaria. So we're saying give a minimum of 1 lunch a year to save someone or to promote Nigeria or your government. Now, what does it take to come under VAIDS? It's very simple. It's called voluntary. That means that you can assess yourself, you can put together your records, show how much income you have generated over the 6-year period, and simply apply a simple rule. As an individual, there are rates and calculations that you go by. But if I was going to give you a ballpark figure, you will not pay effectively more than 20% of your total revenue. And you also have the opportunity, in discussion with your relevant state tax authority, to pay that tax over a period of 3 years. For the corporate organizations, it's a bit more simple, 30%. Look at your investments where you earn income abroad, even in Ghana, across the border, and you've not been filing. Fill a simple form, which I believe is in your packs. Nobody's going to ask questions, and come in and discuss payment terms over a maximum period equally of 3 years. And at the end of that exercise, you get a certificate of declaration. I'm going to talk also about what is happening worldwide, also, which I think should encourage us to take advantage of VAIDS. Now, this is theory when I say the benefit of VAIDS. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about you not paying penalty, of not paying interest. But the true benefit of VAIDS is that we'll be building our country. A few of you might have done work for various state governments. They deducted your withholding tax, and they did not remit your withholding tax. And we said that anybody who has worked for any state government or any government organization who had the withholding tax deducted and not remitted to us, please see us. We'll still issue your tax lien certificate, and we'll take it upon ourselves to get you that credit, of course, from that relevant source, be government or non-government.
Mr. Wole Obayomi and Mr. Tunde Fowler speak further on the Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme initiative.
When you voluntarily declare your income for tax purposes, you are entitled to waiver of interest and penalties on the tax that you will have paid over the years. And that could be a substantial amount of money. So that's a saving in terms of financial costs that you are about to pay in full compliance. Secondly is that you have immunity from criminal prosecution, because under the tax laws, if you default in paying your tax, you're actually liable to criminal prosecution, and you may be jailed, fined, and you still have to pay the tax. Government is saying, no, I will not prosecute you if you voluntarily declare your income for tax purposes. Last but by no means the least, that government is also saying, I will not audit your affairs, because normally every taxpayer is subject to tax audit. Now, by voluntarily showing up and declaring your income for tax purposes and paying your tax, you'll be granted immunity against tax audit. So those are the benefits to taxpayers in the country.
Well, I think we'll truly know the success rate by March 31st. But in terms of inquiries, a lot of people talking through consultants. But in terms of actual collection so far, we have about 20 billion from the corporate side, but we do have a target of 305 billion naira in the first instance. So I believe in March, we'll start to see a bit more action.
With 14 million out of 70 million economically active Nigerians tax compliant at the moment, the Voluntary Asset Income Declaration Scheme provides an avenue for improving tax administration in the country, which is vital to improving Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio to the sustainable ratio of 15%.